Soto was a miserable, lonely loser, whose life was worse than an NPC until he survived a shipwreck, and the plot gods gave him the power to change anyone's fate. However, instead of saving the world, Soto uses his power to rizz up the baddies in his school and get them to move in with him. Before this, he was on his way to school one morning when one of Truck-kun's brothers almost isekai'd everyone waiting at the traffic light. Fortunately, it changed directions before that happened, but while everyone around wondered what happened, a blonde girl watched Soto walk away. Later on at school, the girl kept trying to figure out what role Soto had played in stopping the accident. She thought about tracking him down since he was wearing the same uniform as her, but she also knew it would be the same as searching for a needle in a haystack. The next moment, the teacher introduced a new student, who to her surprise, turned out to be Soto. After the first period, Soto turned down everyone who tried to be friendly with him, making sure to topple their various flags. When he got up to leave, Nanami called out to him, saying she needed to speak with him. She then took him to the rooftop and asked him to explain why he always looked at the top of a person's head before he talked to them. Soto was surprised that she had noticed this and tried to come up with a response that didn't make him sound like he belonged in a straitjacket. When he tried denying her accusations, she told him she'd been at the traffic stop that morning. Having no other choice, Soto explained that he could see flags raised by people. He said one of the men at the traffic stop had raised a death flag, and he simply toppled by whispering something in his ear. Nanami asked if he'd done the same thing to their classmates, and he told her that he had. However, when he mentioned that they had raised friendship and love flags, Nanami began to laugh. She told him she could believe his talk about death flags, but said that if he kept claiming he could see other flags, he might as well admit he had more than a few loose screws. Soto didn't seem to mind that she mocked him and told her that she was free to believe whatever she wanted. He also let her know that misfortune befell anyone who got close to him, which was why he toppled the flags of their classmates. His words made her remember her past a little bit, but she quickly brushed it aside and told him that all he was doing was pushing people away. To prove to her that he was indeed the horseman of death, he told her about the cruise ship he was on with his family. It so happened that just like Atlantis, it sank and was never found, but Soto somehow survived and returned. In response, Nanami poked him in the eye and told him to stop acting like he was a drama queen on Broadway. She then pointed to her head and asked if he could see any of his stupid flags there. It was then he realized he couldn't see any of her flags, and Nanami made it clear that a flag would never raise on her head before proposing that they become friends. Later during lunch, Soto and Nanami were sitting under a tree eating when a girl tiptoed over to them. The first thing Soto noticed was the friendship flag at the top of her head, so he politely asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Mahugasawa Akane, and Nanami quietly asked if she had a flag, so he confirmed it. Immediately, he tried toppling the flag, but was surprised to see that it was raised again, so he kept trying. In the end, he gave in and allowed her to sit with them, after which he asked Nanami who Akane was. Nanami told him she was the heiress to the Mahugasawa financial group, which made him refer to her as a princess. Akane overheard what he said and told him that Nanami was a princess, as she explained that she was the 13th princess of her country, which shocked Soto. Akane then announced that all three of them were going to be friends from that moment on. After school, Akane insisted on going to Soto's place and even managed to drag Nanami along. However, both girls had to pick their mouths off the floor when they saw the shabby-looking rat trap Soto was living in. It turned out to be one of the school's old dormitories, and Soto was the only one living there. Even though it looked like a death trap, Akane expressed her joy at being invited to a boys' room for the first time. Soto soon excused himself to go to the bathroom, so Nanami asked Akane why she was so interested in Soto. Akane told her that it was because Soto looked pitiful, and seeing him made her want to swoop in and save him. She explained that she once had a friend when she was younger, but her family has separated them. She said the girl had also looked pitiful at the time, and since she couldn't save her, she hoped she could save Soto. This made Nanami say that both Akane and Soto were two peas in a pod, since they both had the doom and gloom thing working for them. She told Akane she hoped they could both save each other in one way or another, making Akane jump and hug her. Soto walked in at that moment and tried to make sense of the scene playing out before him, but eventually gave up. Just when the girls were about to leave, Akane suddenly remembered she'd forgotten something in Soto's room. She asked Nanami to wait and begin walking back in, but Soto noticed she had a death flag on her head. He quickly asked Nanami what they had talked about in his absence, and when she told him it was about Akane's past, he rushed after her. Unfortunately, by the time he got to her, it was too late, and she fell through the hole that suddenly opened up underneath her feet. Soto rushed to her side and tried to topple the flag by saying positive things to her. But it didn't work. Eventually, he had to kiss her, so that a romance flag would replace the death flag, and it worked almost immediately. Akane screamed in surprise, who went all Randy Orton on his ass. The next day at school, a green-haired girl named Okiku tackled Soto to the floor and unintentionally straddled him, shocking everyone. She then told him how much she missed him and said she'd heard about the sunken cruise ship. She apologized to Soto for losing his parents, but when he talked about his sister, she looked confused. At that point, Soto was sure no one else but him had memories of his elder sister, but he said nothing about it. Nanami, on the other hand, got tired of watching them in that compromising position, so she kicked Soto into the wall. It wasn't until Okiku explained that they were childhood friends that she calmed down and stopped seeing him as a shameless skirt chaser. Later in the day, Okiku accompanied Soto and the girls to his dorm, and she began to cry when she saw it. However, she soon forgot about the deplorable state of the building when she noticed how close Soto seemed to Nanami and Akane. She immediately gave them her big sister's approval,
Yes! Yes! Yes!
saying that there was nothing she wanted more than to see Soto happy. Akane was happy about it, but Nanami complained and asked Soto to set the record straight as she wasn't going to be known as one of his women. Soto told her that he didn't mind because he wanted all three of them to get along better. On their way back to the school campus, Nanami asked Soto what kind of flag Okiku had. He told her it was a sisterly love flag, and she advised him to topple it else Okiku would baby him for the rest of his life. Soto gave it a shot, but to his surprise, the flag dodged and Okiku carried on with her teasing, completely unaware of what he was trying to do. At the campus, they went to the tea club to visit a chibi low-lee named Ryuka Shibara Tsumuji. According to Nanami, she was the school elder and had been around since before any of them were in diapers. Okiku had brought them there to ask Tsumuji if anything could be done about Soto's dorm, and she told them that it would be hard. Because the dorm was built right after the school was founded, and since there wasn't much funding, they wouldn't be able to rebuild it. The next moment, a girl walked in and Tsumuji scolded her for not taking her shoes off. The girl told her not to get her panties in a twist before she introduced herself to Soto and the girls as Saitekuji Maimori, the student council president. She told them she had a solution to Soto's housing problem and took them to the dorm. It seemed she'd tasked the Civil Engineering Society with rebuilding the place, so with some assistance from Soto's classmates, they began working on it. A week later, the dorm was finished, and while everyone was cleaning up, Soto was struggling to move a couch. He then called out to the person on the stairs, asking for help as he assumed the person was a boy. However, he was shocked to see the face of a girl and quickly apologized. The person, who was a boy, told him not to apologize and even thanked him for being the first person to address him as a boy. So many friendship flags sprouted on his head, making Soto wonder how he was supposed to topple them all if he ever attempted to do so. The boy then introduced himself as Tuzokiyama Megumu and begged Soto to call him Megumu, unlike the others who called him Meg. Soto agreed and asked why he was dressed in shorts and not trousers. Megumi explained that his sister thought he looked cuter that way, so she had taken permission from the school to allow him to dress that way. Just then, Akane walked in and saw both of them, and as expected, she misinterpreted the situation. So it had to explain that Megumi was a boy and not a girl to change her mind. Okiku and Nanami soon joined them, and they both referred to Megumi as a girl, making him feel sad. That evening, Maimori told them that the dorm would be closed down because it was a school policy to have more than one resident. As soon as she dropped the bomb on them, she ran off, leaving Tsumuji to assure Soto that all he had to do was find housemates and he'd be fine. Soto told them he didn't mind living alone as he was used to it, but Akane and Okiku insisted on moving in. Megumi also agreed to move in, and Nanami was somehow roped into moving in as well. Later on, while the girls were taking a bath, Megumi suggested going to look in on them. He dragged Soto to the bathroom, but chickened out at the last minute and pushed Soto into the bathroom. As soon as Nanami saw him, she wasted no time and smacked him with a bowl across the head. After surviving the murder attempt, Soto was on his way back to his room when he saw a death flag in front of a door. He went into the room and saw the flag on top of a box, which he opened and found a letter addressed to him. In the letter, there was mention of a princess knight, a mage, a cleric, and a ninja, along with flags getting raised. Almost immediately, he recalled his encounter with a girl named Sakura, who played chess with him. Soto had lost to her, and as part of their deal, he had to do what she asked him to without complaining. To his surprise, she gave him her powers to see flags and requested that he discover the truth behind the world. Back in the present, Soto realized everything was connected to the cruise ship and Sakura. The next day, Soto and the girls heard the sound of a helicopter, and when they looked outside, a large container was dropped on the front lawn. Immediately, they went to see what it was, and when it opened up, a female robot stepped out. The only problem was that its head fell off and made them scream because it looked creepy. Eventually, the robot put its head back on and told them she'd been sent by Akana's family to watch over her. She also said her name was Ruri, and everyone accepted her with open arms, as there was no reason to send her back. Okiku then pointed out that they would be late for school, so they all got up to leave and were surprised to see Ruri going with them. Sometime during the day, while they had lunch on the rooftop, they watched a live broadcast from Maimori, who announced the upcoming athletic games. She said the games would hold for an entire week, and the team with the highest scores would be named MVP. Everyone got excited and began talking about what game they wanted to compete in with Soto, and it made him feel good. Spending time with them distracted him from the letter and the large death flag on his head. Maimori soon joined them on the roof, and since she was always the bearer of bad news, she informed them that if they failed to be named MVP, Soto would be expelled and their dorm closed. Going back a little, it was revealed that the board of directors weren't happy with a co-ed dormitory because it was indecent. Maimori had called them a bunch of jealous old farts who were hating on Soto because he managed to raise up more girls than they could ever dream of doing in their teenage years. She also reminded them that all the other dorms were filled up, so they couldn't complain. When they tried to argue, she told them that Quest Hall, which was the name of the dorm, would win the MVP. Unfortunately, she didn't stop there and told them that if Quest Hall didn't win, they could close down the dorm and expel Soto. After hearing her explanation, the girls pointed out that she was the reason they were in the mess. Okiku even kicked her to the floor and would have beaten the shit out of her if it weren't for Soto. In an attempt to redeem herself, Maimori told them she'd gotten someone to help train them to victory. After she left, the girls and Megumu tried to encourage Soto by telling him they would go with him if he got expelled. Before Soto could refuse their offers, someone shot an arrow at him. Fortunately, it landed between his legs. The shooter turned out to be a girl named Rin, and she told them she'd been assigned by Maimori to train them for the athletic games. However, she made it clear to Soto that she believed he was an incompetent waste of space and a disgrace to all men since he was relying on girls to keep him in school. Early the next day, Rin woke them all up to begin their training for the games. After she'd worked them to the bone for a few hours, everyone except for Soto returned to the dorms to rest. Soto soon tired and fell to his knees, making Rin tell just how pathetic and weak she thought he was.
Damn!
Despite the insults, Soto didn't seem offended, and he told her that if he were expelled it wouldn't matter because he was used to being alone. Rin told him to man up and stop behaving like his life was some tragic Shakespeare play when he was living the dream of most guys his age. Soto then asked Rin what type of guys liked, and she told him she believed all men were worse than trash. But there was only one person she acknowledged as a true man, and he was none other than her childhood friend Soto. She said that at first they were enemies who fought all the time, but as time went on, they became the best of friends. Unfortunately, he moved away one day, and she hadn't seen him since then, but she still considered him to be the next best thing after the iPhone 15. Soto then told her that he once knew a person who always called him Soto. Rin was surprised by the coincidence and told him she'd text her friend to tell him about it. The next moment, Soto's phone beeped with a message, and when he read it out loud, they realized Soto was Suda. Rin was so embarrassed and tried to play it off by chasing Soto around, but when she nearly fell and he saved her, her attitude changed. Soto noticed she had a Yander flag, so he quickly spoke to her and made her cheer up, which changed the flag immediately. When they returned to the dorm, they told the others about their discovery, and Rin assured them that they would win no matter what. On the first day of the games, Rin explained that aside from getting high points in their events, teamwork would give them a boost. She then handed them the list of activities each one of them had to participate in. While the events were going on, Maimori made it her duty to bring everyone's attention to Soto's team, who were all doing well. At the end of the day, they went home to celebrate their victory, and Rin reminded them that they still had days left. While they ate, they talked about how they were doing everything to keep Soto with them. At some point, while the girls joked amongst themselves, Soto slipped away to wash his face and became depressed when he saw his death flag again. The next day, He was still depressed that he failed to catch the ball during the free kick event and lost. By the fourth day, Quest Hall was in 8th place, and the girls couldn't help but wonder what went wrong as they had done so well in the beginning. Meanwhile, Soto was sitting alone in a dark corner somewhere in the dorms when Ruri went to meet him. She told him that she had concluded that their failure was due to his depressed state. She said he had somehow transferred his emotions to the girls, and they were all in low spirits. He then asked her to come with him, and they went to the greenhouse, where he revealed that he was going to die. He said that was the reason he didn't mind getting expelled, as being far from them would reduce the pain of his death. He also told her about his ability to prevent the death of others, and admitted that he could not do the same for himself. Suddenly, he remembered the letter, and when he mentioned the first flag being raised, Ruri began searching her database. When she was finished, she told him she was aware he was looking for the truth behind the world, and asked if he wished to find out. When he told her yes, she explained that the first door opened by the 4 heroes under the royal banner was connected to the area behind the world. She said that the one who would overturn the death flag would be waiting behind the door. Her words made Sota ask if she had information about Sakura, but Ruri told him that she didn't, so he asked if she knew where the first door was. In response, she showed him a holographic image of the old quest hall. Nanami was dressed as a knight, Akane a mage, and Ruri a ninja. Nanami then led them into the building, down a hallway, until they found an underground passage. After walking through the passage for a while, they stumbled upon a door, which Nanami called the first door. Once they opened it, a bright light shone and Sakura stood there, reminding Sota of his duty to discover the truth behind the world. Back in the real world, Sota wasn't convinced the data was reliable, but it gave him hope, so he begged Ruri to help him and she agreed. The next day, Sota told Nanami that he'd spoken to all the girls in Megumi before the games began and told each of them what he knew they needed to hear, which pushed them all to do their best. As soon as Rin handed the sash over to him, both he and Nanami began the last leg of the race. Unfortunately, an accident occurred and Nanami was injured, but she refused to stop and insisted they carry on. Fueled by his desire to keep his friends happy, Sota picked Nanami up and carried her the rest of the way. The accident had slowed them down, so they came in second, and everyone was sad about it. However, Maimoru came along with the board members to speak with them, and they let them know that they had been given the MVP title. This made them all happy, as Sota would remain in the school with them. While they celebrated, one of the board members, who was watching from the bleachers, turned to leave. Surprisingly, he didn't go too far when he transformed into a woman with long blonde hair, dressed in black clothes and a mask. A few days later, while Sota was checking out the hallway he'd seen in the hologram data, the girls came running to him. They found out he'd promised to go on a date with Akane and expressed their displeasure at being left out. To keep everyone happy, he agreed to go on a date with all of them, but Nanami refused to go with them. The first person Sota met up with after leaving home was Megumi, and people around mistook them for a couple. They then went to the arcade, where Sota won a teddy bear for him from a claw machine. To thank him, Megumi took him to a cafe to try out the biggest parfait they had and even suggested finishing it in one gulp. However, he wasn't able to and begged Sota to share his with him, so he did. While they ate, Sota noticed Megumi had cream on his face and told him, but Megumi asked him to wipe it clean for him. It was then Sota looked around for the first time, and he realized everyone was hoping he'd kiss Megumi. Megumi wasn't even trying to change their opinions about their relationship because of the way he was acting. Sota had to use a napkin to wipe his face and destroy whatever unholy images were going around everyone's mind. Next, he met up with Akane, who took him to a lake for a boat ride. She told him her father had suggested it because all the couples who went there broke up after riding the boats. While they were out on the water, Akane nearly fell, but Sota caught her quickly and prevented any injuries. The only problem was that some water splashed on her and her clothes were soaked, allowing him to see her underwear. In her embarrassed state, she admitted her mother had advised her to wear the lingerie set in case things between her and Soto went beyond second base.
Yeah, boy.
Sota couldn't believe her mother was capable of advising her daughter to get cultured on the first date. After leaving Akane, Sota met up with Rin, who was dressed like a normal girl for the first time in her entire life. She was a bit embarrassed, and as soon as Sota noticed the Yandere flag on her head, he told her she looked cute. They then took a seat on a bench, and as they watched some kids playing, Sota told her it reminded him of them as kids. This made Rin pull out some old pictures she had with her, and a particular one caught Sota's attention. Rin recalled it was the day they climbed up a smokestack, but also remembered Sota had made her do a pissing contest. Rin was so embarrassed that in the present, she demanded he make it up to her, but since she was so worked up, she fainted. He had to carry her on his back to meet up with Okiku, who was the last person on his date list. They had to return home so Okiku could put Rin in bed, and while Sota waited for her, he noticed a key holder. When she came back, he'd apologized for ruining their date, so she asked him to make it up to her by lying on her lap. While she rubbed his head, he talked about the key holder, and she told him it was her most prized possession. He had given it to her when they were kids right before he moved away. It was his way of promising to be her younger brother, even though they weren't going to be together again. In the present, Okiku told him that he would always be her brother, and it made him think of his real sister for a moment before Okiku tried to suffocate him with her natural pillows. That night, while the girls took a bath, Ruri took Sota to the underground passage, which she had reduced during the day. When they got to the door, Sota pushed it open and walked into a room with nothing but a treasure chest. Carved onto the side was a knight, a mage, a cleric, a ninja, and some others Sota didn't recognize. Ruri tried scanning it but couldn't tell what it was made of or what was inside it. So Sota suggested they take care of it later. The next moment, a bright light shone from an opening at the side of the room, so Sota ran to check it out. The opening led him outside and he was surprised to see a blue-haired girl, who told him she didn't like how he played with flags. The next day, Sota learned that her name was Mei, and she had just transferred to his class as their newest student. Sota watched as Mei toppled the flags of those who approached her and realized she had the same power as him. However, he was distracted by the girls who showed him a list for their upcoming class trip. Sota checked the list and discovered his name was written on both the hiking and swimming lists. To answer his unspoken question, Ruri showed them a holographic message from Maimori explaining why she had put him on both trips. When the day for the trip arrived, Sota wasn't as excited as the others. After Rin and Okiku dragged a crying Akane towards the hiking group, Sota and the others went to the beach. Everyone, including Ruri, changed into swimsuits, but the most shocking was Sumuji, who had very massive jugs for someone who could pass as one of Santa's helpers. She pretended not to know what they were talking about and pushed Sota into the water. Almost immediately, Sota threw up, so they pulled him back to the shore. He then explained that the sight of water reminded him of the shipwreck, causing Sumuji to start crying and hugging him. She promised to give him swim lessons and asked the others to go enjoy their time. When she tried teaching him, Sota still couldn't keep it together and threw up all over again, so she let him go. He ended up on a bench by the road where a young girl offered him a bottle of water that tasted like cat piss, so he spat it out. She apologized and offered to sell him a popsicle which he bought after he noticed a story fly on her head. The girl sat with him on the bench and introduced herself as Kumiko, but when he asked if she was in school, she became hesitant and left. Later on, he met up with the others including Okiku, Akane, and Rin. Their teacher informed them that those on the beach trip would go hiking the next day and vice versa. Unfortunately, since Sota was on both lists, he was once again dragged to the beach, but this time around he wasn't forced to swim. While he watched the girls, Kumiko approached him, and as she spoke to him, she let it slip that her parents were dead. She also told him that while they were alive, they always taught her not to rely on others for anything at all. As they talked, Akane joined them, complaining about the sea cucumber that had lodged itself in between her air balloons. After she managed to take it off, Sota introduced her to Kumiko, and Akane ended up buying all the popsicles she had left, making Kumiko ask who she was. The moment Sota told her she was an heiress, her attitude suddenly changed and she ran off. Sota went after her and she admitted she felt a little inferior talking to someone like Akane. Sota assured her that it didn't matter, which seemed to brighten her mood and changed the story flag on her head. Kumiko then invited Sota to go somewhere with her, and when he agreed, she took him to a cave where she admitted she knew who he was before she approached him. She told him that both her parents had worked on the cruise ship he was on, and apologized to him for having to deal with the families of the other passengers. She said it was the crew's duty to keep everyone safe, but they had been unable to do so. Sota then asked if she was trying to bear her parents' cross by never relying on anyone else, and she told him yes. This made him tell her that he forgave her just so she could feel better, and he also added that the accident hadn't been anyone's fault. When they turned to leave, they discovered that the tide had come in and the cave was filling up with water. Since neither of them was able to swim, they sat down hoping someone would find them soon. While they waited, Kumiko made Sota promise to be her big brother if they made it out alive. Soto agreed, but when he noticed her flag had been replaced with a death flag, he told her that they didn't have to wait. It worked, but for some reason, it was replaced by 3 more death flags. In his desperate attempt to topple the flags, Soto promised to take her back to the city and enroll her in the academy which toppled the flags. Kumiko was so happy that she accepted just as Ruri emerged from the water. When they got back to the hotel, Soto introduced Kumiko to the others, and they all welcomed her with open arms. They then tried to get Maimori to help with Kumiko's enrollment and scholarship, but she was hesitant, so they promised her a date with Soto. Maimori agreed but told them not to blame her if Soto fell hopelessly in love with her, even though they all knew it wouldn't happen. The next day, Soto and Maimori went on their date, and she suggested going to a nearby stream. While she splashed around in the water, she apologized for forcing him to spend time with her. She also told him that any other guy would have turned down a date with her because she was a little bit too much for them to handle. Soto told her that those who rejected her were blind fools with little sausages, and said that he admired the way she lived her life. His words made her remember her sick brother, who also told him that she was an amazing person. She then hugged Soto and promised to do everything in her power to get Kumiko into the academy. Unfortunately, the board refused her request, so they had to say goodbye to Kumiko. However, when they returned to the dormitory, they were surprised to see Kumiko waiting for them. When they asked how she'd gotten there, she told them that Mei had brought her along with her from the beach. Mei explained that she had hacked into the school system and registered Kumiko as a student, making them call Minori a dumb idiot for not doing that before. After they talked for a while, Maimori announced that she and Sumugi were going to move in, and Mei agreed to stay because of Kumiko. Days later, after Soto dropped Kumiko off at school, he went to the rooftop to speak with Mei. After confirming that she was also able to see flags, she told him that Sakura was known as the Sacrament. She also told him about a being called the Angelus Gemini, which had powers that rivaled his. She claimed it was a ship of fate that sailed on the seas of every plane in existence and was capable of invoking any phenomenon. When she asked what he wished to achieve with his powers, he told her that he wanted to topple his death flag and then do as Sakura had requested. She then said some words in a parallel world where his friends had no idea who he was, and even died as he wasn't there to save them. The final place she took him to was the cruise ship, and he saw himself sitting in a corner. He approached his alternate self and encouraged him not to give up as he still had a lot to live for. His words seemed to work, but when the person turned to face him, he found himself staring into the eyes of Miss Miyuki, his teacher. As they walked together, she revealed she was his great-granddaughter in that reality, which surprised him. The next moment, there was an explosion and they were separated by a wall of fire. However, he noticed a protagonist flag on her head as she promised to live a good life. When next he opened his eyes, he was back in his world, and Mei told him that because he'd saved Miyuki, her world would now revolve around her, just like theirs revolved around him. Whilst she was still speaking, Soto coughed up blood, and she realized his death flag was growing stronger. She tried suppressing it and was almost overwhelmed by it, but she refused to give up. By the time she managed to suppress it, Soto was out cold and Sakura suddenly appeared out of nowhere. She told Mei that she couldn't let her interfere with her plans because the members of the House of the Seven Virtues knew things she didn't want Soto to find out yet. She then touched her head and Mei passed out immediately. But by the time Soto opened his eyes, Mew was already awake. When he asked her about the flag, she looked at him strangely, so he asked about the House of Seven Virtues. But she still had no idea what he was talking about, making him realize that she had lost all her memory about the flags and everything related to it. Days later, Ruri kidnapped Soto and took him to Akane, who explained that Ruri had flown off when she told her she wished she could see him. She also added that she had no idea the crazy robot had gone to retrieve him until they arrived. Soto assured her that he wasn't angry with her, so Ruri left them alone and walked away to go to her maintenance. Almost an hour later, while Soto and Akane were drinking tea, the door burst open and all their friends rushed inside. They immediately began to fuss over Soto, as they explained that Okiku and Ren had called to tell them what happened. Akane had apologized again on Ruri's behalf for causing trouble, but they told her it was fine. When they admitted they were happy to see Soto again after going home for the summer holidays, she invited them to spend the day at her house. The first thing they did was have lunch, but since none of them had grown up in high society, they had no idea how to behave. Soto suggested they watch Akane and repeat the things she did. However, it soon became obvious that they were dumb as hell, because when Akane dropped her knife, they did the same. When she ordered a second serving of roast beef for Soto, they did the same, and he ended up with a mountain of roast beef that would make Scooby-Doo very happy. Later on, while Soto was soaking in the bath, Rin walked in and almost had a heart attack when he accidentally flashed her his crown jewels. She called him a culture-peeping Tom and asked why he was in the women's bath. Soto argued that it was the men's bath, but swallowed his tongue when he heard the other girls approaching. Rin quickly grabbed his hand and hid him behind a large rock just as the door opened. Unfortunately, she had accidentally given him a show of her body, so she felt embarrassed and began complaining. Her reaction caught the attention of the others, who walked over to her trying to find out what was wrong. Rin managed to keep them occupied long enough for Soto to crawl out of the bath with his dignity intact. The next day, Nanami called Akane on a video call and was surprised to see that they were all together. In the end, they all took a flight to Nanami's country, Bladefield, and she welcomed them at the airport before they all boarded a train. When the train made its first stop, Soto went to use the bathroom. On his way back to his friends, he met Nanami's younger sister, Princess Hakuo, and she invited him to tell her stories of Japan. Nanami soon found them, and just as she was scolding Soto for pulling a Zoro and wandering off, someone walked in. It turned out to be a robot resembling Ruri, and she had come to eliminate Nanami and Hakuo. Hakuo's maids did their best to hold her off, but she overpowered them. Just before Soto grabbed Hakuo and ran off, he noticed a death flag above her head which scared him. The Terminator, Ruri 2.0, immediately went after them and chased them until she cornered them in the last car of the train. To save their lives, Soto detached the car, and before the robot could follow, Number 0 stabbed her. With no engine to move the car, Soto and the girls walked to the nearest town, and Hakuo was very excited about everything she saw. When they sat down next to a fountain, Nanami told Soto about the House of the Seven Virtues. According to her, they were the ones responsible for the attack, but before she could say more, they arrived. Number 0 then stepped forward and told them that the Crown Prince had ordered them to escort the princess to him. When they arrived at the palace, Soto was nearly crushed by the girls, who were glad to see him. Not long after that, Ilia, the Crown Prince, arrived and thanked Soto for protecting his sisters. Meanwhile, Number 0 approached Medi, whose codename was Number 7. She tried talking to her, but Medi had no idea who she was, so she apologized and walked away from her. Later on, she went to visit Ilia in his office and told him that all the opposition had been crushed and no one was left. It was revealed that Ilia was the one who leaked the information about the princesses. Ilia admitted that it had been a risky move, but said he wouldn't mind doing it again if it meant achieving his goal. Number 0 then told him that he'd done nothing wrong, as they were only testing the girls to see if they would be worthy successors. She also said it was the duty of the House of Seven Virtues to serve the king no matter what, right before she disappeared. Meanwhile, Soto was trying to understand why the girls had all gathered in his room and were disturbing his peace. The next moment, the television switched to a live broadcast of Ilia, who announced that his father, the king, had passed away. He said it was for that reason that assassins had gone after Nanami and Hakuo on the train, which confused everyone. When asked what their deaths would mean, he revealed that both girls were not the former king's children, but his. This revelation not only shocked the citizens but the girls, as well as they had no idea that their brother was their real father. Soon after the funeral was held, Nanami and Hakuo informed everyone that after the mandatory 3 days of mourning, there would be a celebration to honor the new king. On the day of the celebration, everyone gathered on the street to watch the parade. Soto and Megumu were then mistaken as performers and forced to wear bride and groom costumes. When they got closer to where their friends were, the girls nearly died from shock the moment they laid eyes on Megumu. After the parade, Megumu bawled his eyes out while the girls tried to convince him that he looked good. Meanwhile, Soto went to speak with Hakuo, and he told her he was aware that she had been pretending to be fine. Hakuo felt relieved that someone had noticed and admitted that she felt he'd be the only person who could understand her feelings, as he always looked so depressed all the time. Soto didn't know if it was a good thing that Hakuo seemed to think that he was giving off Wednesday Addams vibes. However, he listened to her as she told him that she wasn't sure how to handle everything. She told him that everyone else seemed to have moved on from the king's death so quickly it made her wonder if they truly cared. Soto told her that it was their way of honoring the king because he was sure he wouldn't want anyone to be sad. His words seemed to cheer Hakuo up, but they soon realized the girls had been listening when they saw them crying. They'd all comforted Hakuo and told her that she could always count on them no matter what. Nanami then thanked Soto for cheering Hakuo up even though he had only just met her recently. Later that night, Soto was sitting by the fountain when he noticed a stone tablet in the corner. As soon as he approached it, number 0 appeared behind him and told him it was the story of the first queen of Bladefield. The story was about a princess who raised the royal banner and sent the demons away. However, one of the demons took revenge and shot her dead with an arrow, so the boy known as the royal banner, who was blessed by the goddess, saved her. He used his powers to bring the princess back to life and became the royal banner, never to be human again. Soto was too stunned to speak as the story seemed very similar to his, and he began to wonder if he would have the same fate. He recalled everything that had happened to him up until that point and wondered if it had all been for nothing. Number 0 then revealed that she had ordered the assassin on Nanami and Hakua, stating that she wanted to see the strength of the future queens of Bladefield and also to eliminate all opposition. She also said she was willing to lay down her life for the world and asked him what he thought of the world that didn't want or need him. Soto didn't know how to respond to her question, so she left him alone with a promise to meet him again. Days later, Soto and the girls returned to Japan, and they brought Hakua along with them, so she enrolled at the academy. After her introduction to the class, Miyuki reminded them of the upcoming school festival and told them to prepare. Later that day, while Soto was speaking to Megumo, Hakua approached him with some papers and asked him to sign them. He did and later realized that he had been deceived into endorsing all his dorm mates for a beauty pageant. As the days went on, they had all prepared for the festival, and on the night before the first day of the festival, Soto couldn't sleep. He was so worried about the flag and how he might end up dying like the boy in the story, which wasn't something he wanted. The next moment, he heard Nanami asking if everything was okay since his door was open. Soto quickly hid the key and told her that it was, but she looked at him strangely before she walked away. On the day of the festival, the first event happened to be the beauty pageant, and Soto found himself acting as a judge. After the contestants were introduced, they all did different things to gather points. From making Soto squirt water on their bodies with a water gun to cooking and answering quizzes. Each girl ended up with the same score, so to break the tie they asked them to tell Soto how they felt about him. Nanami was first, and to boost her confidence, she let her hair down before telling Soto her feelings. She said she never liked his stupid face because he always acted like the whole world was on his shoulders. However, as she got to know him, her opinion of him changed, but recently he'd been slowly reverted to his old gloomy self. She told him that she didn't understand why, but said she was willing to stand by him until everything was sorted out. Soto could not believe that there was someone who cared about him so much that he began to cry. When Nanami noticed it, he lied that he was trying to stifle a yawn and made her ask if her confession had been boring. She soon realized the others were crying too, and when her scores came in, it broke the tally machine. The others then said they didn't need to continue the contest, and Nanami was declared the winner. Her gift was a free pass for the festival, including food stalls and a date with Soto. Nanami took the chance to try every snack and food she could find as she dragged Soto along with her. As they walked through the hallways, Soto was suddenly knocked down by a girl, who begged them to hide her. After a group of students ran past their hiding spot, the girl took off her glasses, and Nanami recognized her as the famous idol, Sarika. Soto had no idea who she was, so Nanami schooled him a bit on Sarika's fame and rise to stardom. After she bonded with Sarika, she asked why she was in their school, and Sarika told her it was because of the show she was to put on. Nanami pointed out that the show was on the last day, and Sarika admitted that she was a bit curious, so she came to check out the school. As a loyal fan, Nanami offered to show Sarika around the school, and Soto went along with them. After touring the school and meeting all their friends, they ended up close to the stage where Sarika was to perform. It was then she told them that her first concert was at her old middle school, right after she debuted. Even though that performance had been a hit, Sarika said that she struggled for a year and a half to sell her CDs. She admitted that she had considered quitting, but a mysterious boy had seen her and spoken to her. She said he told her he had a victory flag on her head, so she was bound to make it, and just like magic, his words came true. When she realized she had just told them the secret to her success, she asked them to keep it a secret and then left. As soon as she left, Nanami demanded that Soto explain what Sarika had revealed to them because it was obvious he was the one she was talking about. Soto explained that he had seen Sarika on the day he wanted to take his life, but he decided to do one last act of kindness by speaking to her. When he said it was for his self-satisfaction, Nanami argued that even though that was the case, he had still helped Sarika. which was a good thing and something he should have used his powers for instead of chasing everyone and him away. Days later, everyone gathered on the stage and Sarika began her performance and Nanami was so excited. As Soto watched on, he noticed a light flag above Sarika's head and watched as the light from those around him transferred to her flag. In return, the flag transferred light to him, and it made him realize that even though his death flag meant doom, he was surrounded by those who would do anything for him. When he tried to hold on to the flag, the world stood still as everyone froze, and when he looked on stage, he saw the number 0. She told him that his powers had evolved and was now overloading the system. She then showed him the pictures of the parallel world Mehdi had shown him and said it was a virtual world. She explained that the House of Seven Virtues created different virtual worlds from data to oppose the Angelus Gemini. She said they had done it in order to prevent the computer program from taking over the world, but Soto didn't look surprised. When she asked why, he pointed out that she had a truth flag on her head and that he could see the data in his hands. House, he asked what would happen if he chose to remain in the world, and she told him it would crash completely. This was enough for him to decide to leave before the world unfrozen again. Later on, Nanami looked for him at the party, and when she couldn't find him, she complained to Akane. But to her surprise, Akane had no memory of him. Days later, Soto found himself in the virtual space fighting off the Angelus Gemini's minions as he tried to protect the virtual gate of Bladefield. Meanwhile, Nanami couldn't help but wonder why none of their friends remembered Soto. Months passed and Soto was still fighting in the virtual space, and no one except Nanami noticed his absence. Eventually, the girls decided to move out of the dorm, but Nanami refused to leave without finding out the truth. She ran up to Soto's room and forced the door open, but all she found was the letter. When she picked it up, she recognized the handwriting was hers, but had no recollection of writing it. Just then, Ruri came into the room and told her she had broken Soto's encryption before she kissed her. Nanami found herself in a virtual space and was surprised to find herself staring at a girl who looked exactly like her. The girl introduced herself as Soto's elder sister, but added that she was but one half of Nanami. She explained that their world was built around many other virtual worlds, and that because number 0 wanted to stop the Angelus Gemini at all costs, she set her eyes on Soto. Since he was a descendant of the royal banner and the princess knight, she knew he was born with the power she needed. This was why she had linked his mind to multiple simulations to force his powers to activate. Nanami too said that once they discovered her plan, they tried to help Soto, but number 0 found out and split them into two. Nanami had all the information about number 0's plan, while Nanami 1 didn't even remember she had a brother. After Nanami 2 escaped, she tried to complete the mission, but she lost power and had to merge with Ruri as there was nowhere else to go. After her explanation, she told Nanami 1 that Soto had been fighting alone in the virtual space, so they had to help him. Nanami 1 agreed and hugged Nanami 2, so by the time they returned to the real world they were whole again. Nanami then asked Ruri to help, and just as Ruri agreed, she noticed Akane standing at the door with tears in her eyes. She told Nenija she felt she had forgotten something important and said she wanted to help her. While they were still speaking, the others arrived along with Miyuki, so Nanami took them to the chest room. She told them it was to save her brother, and as soon as they all laid their hands on the chest, it began to glow. Meanwhile, Soto was on his last leg and had just come face to face with Angelus Gemini. Just when he thought he would lose, Nanami and the others appeared to lend him a helping hand. As they fought, Soto tried to make sense of why they would risk their lives to save him, but he couldn't figure it out. The battle progressed and the girls were winning, so the ship absorbed all its minions and floated in the air. It easily knocked the girls out and tried to do the same for Soto, but he was protected by it at Arkora. As he struggled against the beam, he found himself back on the cruise ship the day the accident occurred. It turned out he'd been on board with Nanami, Okiku, Akane, Megumu, and Rin, and they were trying to get out. Soto had noticed a young girl standing alone, so he grabbed her hand and dragged her along with him. The girl asked why he'd saved her, and he told her that anyone with a shred of humanity would do the same. He then asked for her name, and she told him it was Lovelace's demon, but she seemed to know his name already. Just then, he heard a cry for help, so he rushed to the place and found a man stuck under a table. He quickly helped him, but there was an explosion and some debris fell on top of him, trapping him completely. The man then promised to return with help before running out of the room and leaving Soto alone. After a few ninjas passed, Laplace approached him and tried to convince him that the man had abandoned him. Soto refused to believe it, but when things began to get worse, he cried out, saying he didn't want to die all alone. The next moment, the man returned with Nanami and the others, and together they tried to free him. Unfortunately, it was too heavy, and when another explosion hit, Soto told them to run to safety, but they refused. Suddenly, everything froze and Laplace revealed that everyone except him would die as they all had death flags. She said the only way to prevent it was if he took on their flags as his own and shouldered everything alone. Soto agreed even though she told him it would plunge him into disperse and everyone would lose their memories. Back in the present, Soto realized that his death flag was an accumulation of all the death flags he toppled. He decided to use it to destroy Angelus Gemini, but he wasn't strong enough and would have died if the girls didn't help him. The next thing he knew, he was waking up in a room with number 0 standing at his side, and she told him he was back in the real world. She also confessed that she'd linked his mind to various simulations to draw out his power, but said she didn't regret it. As she spoke, she took off her mask and Soto was shocked to see an older Nanami staring back at him. However, she revealed that she was the first queen of Bladefield and thanked him for everything. After she left, Nanami walked in and ran to hug her brother, but Soto already knew she didn't remember the things that happened. Days later, he returned to the dorm and met Akane, who had no memory of him. Soto played it cool, and as they walked around the dorm, he got a sudden sense of déjà vu. Immediately, he rushed to grab her before she fell through the floor, and she thanked him for saving her life once again. While they held on to each other, they had no idea that Sakura and Laplace were watching them from the top of a tree. That's it for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.